Welcome to Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation possible. You will get to hear from CSIA system integrators and industry partners to get a better understanding of how they help their clients solve process challenges and how they've earned success in their careers. Along the way, we will touch on system integration best practices, technology, trends, and challenges. Whether you are a manufacturer, end user, supplier, or system integrator, you will enjoy the insights these industry professionals bring to this podcast. Let's get started. Hi, my name is Lisa Richter, the host of Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation and processing possible. In today's episode, we're talking industrial automation with Andy Parrish, who is Vice President for R&D Tax Credits at Diligentiam, a firm that helps medium and large companies with financial consulting needs ranging from due diligence, R&D tax credits, and cost reduction and segregation strategies. They are based in Rhode Island. Andy began working with the company in 2013 as a project analyst on R&D tax credit engagements. Since then, he has helped grow the R&D department into the company's largest business unit, and now leads the R&D tax credit team on hundreds of engagements across the country each year. Since his promotion to VP in 2018, his role has expanded to include strategy and content development. Prior to working in this field, Andy served in the Marine Corps Infantry. And since 2016, Andy has been an elected official for the town of Suffield, Connecticut. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Lisa, thank you for having me.
I know I talked a little bit about your company in the bio, but what else can you tell us about it and your role there?
Sure. So Diligentiam was formed to help small to mid-sized businesses figure out ways to unleash cash in their business. And we do this through various tax and financial strategy. You know, our team has hundreds of years in experience in corporate tax and finance management. And essentially what we do is help understand what a company's goal is and then see if any of our areas of expertise can develop a solution that will help them meet that goal. On the tax side, we have strategies like the R&D tax credit, like cost segregation, IC disc, various niche tax areas that we can use. And then on the financial side, we have our expertise in corporate merger and acquisition, business valuation, and financial strategy. So we're able to use both the tax and the financial side to kind of synergize together services that really create a value add for our clients. And our clients, you know, we work a lot through brokers and through CPA firms, but we also do direct to business as well. So my role at Diligentiam specifically is to lead the R&D tax credit division, which, as you said, is a large part of our business. In that, I have a team of people that work under me, and we have expertise in this specific area of the tax code, the R&D tax credit, and we work with companies to help them obtain those tax credits, which I'm sure we're going to talk about a little bit more.
Yeah, but first I'm curious about the name of the company. Where did that come from? And, you know, what is it? Does it have a particular meaning?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a cool name, I think. So the Diligentiam is a derivation of the Latin word diligentia, which means diligent or attendant. Part of our philosophy has been to apply diligence into every area of a client's business to help identify areas where value could be added. And the partners really came up with a cool way to express that philosophy through one word, diligentiam. So, and I've looked it up and I've taken Latin in college. So I'm an expert here, guys. But so when you conjugate diligentiam, it literally means I am diligent. So I think the name is pretty cool in that it is able to sum up our kind of approach to consulting in one word.
Does the company specialize in any industry, product, or discipline?
So we don't specialize in any industry. Our services can be used across industries. The company is built to be a financial and tax tool in the toolbox of CPAs, brokers, and business owners. All of our services are catered to help clients meet their financial goals, whether that be improving cash flow or selling the business. So we really can apply the strategy to any company in any industry. That being said, some of the services are what you could consider turnkey. the R&D tax credit, which, as I said, what my team specializes in, that could be considered a turnkey service in that the R&D tax credit has a set of rules that we have to apply to every client. And that's what we specialize in doing, is helping figure out how does a company, or if a company meets the legal requirements for this tax credit. And then we go and help them access that benefit if it's there.
So I'm curious then, help me understand why you felt like CSIA was a good fit to the point where you wanted to become a member.
Since I've been doing these R&D tax credits, some of our biggest success stories have been in the industrial automation space. The first project I ever worked on was a robotics and controls engineering company who has since kind of expanded their operations as a family-owned company, and we're a family-owned company as well. So we had a lot of connection there, and I've really gotten to see, not only through them, but through other automation and integrator clients as well, how a lot of the work that they do is pure R&D, in that they're taking a lot of engineering risk, they're solving problems. So since we've had such success with those types of clients, I really wanted to reach out to the industry as a whole. And I did some research and asked around, and you guys seemed like you had a good message, good content, and a good client base. So we joined.
So tell me a little bit more about this R&D credit and how it works. And also, I'm really curious in terms of order of magnitude. Like, are we talking a couple $100 here? Are we talking, a percentage of the business? Like, help me put that into context.
The R&D tax credit is a program that's been around for a while. And it's essentially, the government has designed it to reward companies who use trial and error based activities to overcome uncertainties in the course of their business activities. Now, the tax credit essentially is a dollar for dollar offset. If you have this tax credit, it can act as a dollar for dollar offset of your income tax liabilities. And in general, the way that it works is that any wages, contractor expenses, supply costs that are associated with what are legally defined as qualified research activities, you're able to add those up, calculate them through a tax form, and then generate this tax credit. Now, the credit generally ends up being between 7.5 and 10 cents for every research dollar. So if we find that a company has $1 million of R&D wages, that means that they're generally going to get a tax credit of $100,000. So to answer your question about how much money we're talking about, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars if you're a company that is really heavy in engineering or product design. Now, in order to qualify for the tax credit, doesn't matter what industry you're in, as long as you can pass what is called the 4-part test, then you can claim expenses towards this credit. Now, these parts, I'll go through them, and then we can kind of discuss how they really lend well to what the automation and integration industry is doing. So the first part is that the company must prove that is working on what's called a qualified business component. Business component is generally a product or a service. The second gate is a company must show that it faces uncertainty in its effort to reach a final deliverable. The third part is that the company must show that it uses some sort of systematic process of trial and error that allows the company to overcome the uncertainties that they are encountering in the pursuit of that business component. And then the fourth gate is the work must be technical in nature, relying on the principles of the sciences, engineering disciplines, mathematics. That one's pretty self-explanatory. So you've got those 4 gates: business component, uncertainty, experimentation, and technical in nature. Now, when you apply those 4 gates, or the 4-part test, I'm using that term interchangeably, when you apply that to a typical system integrator, you can really see how their day-to-day activities working on client projects fall within these categories or meet these tests. In terms of business component, integrators are performing the R&D to design and install systems for their clients. Now, since most of this work is done under a fixed price contract basis, then that constitutes a qualified business component, since those contracts usually require the integrator to assume some technical and financial risk if the system fails, meaning that they have to go back and fix their own deficiencies at their own cost. The second part, uncertainty, this is really one that is very apparent when you look at the work of an integrator. Taking an entire automated production system both in the mechanical, the controls, the software, the robotics, every component. Taking that from concept to completion requires dozens and dozens of problems to be solved. And then those problems are usually solved through activities that meet that third gate, the experimentation gate. Almost every integrator uses some sort of systematic process to analyze alternative mechanical designs, wiring schemes, PLC code and architecture, WCS software architecture. Depending on how big the system is, there can be more and more components. But in general, these integrators are evaluating alternative approaches, which shows that they are kind of experimenting. Then the fourth gate, technical in nature, that is another one that's self-explanatory for this industry. Integration and automation projects rely on multiple disciplines of engineering. So, I talked a lot about integrators, but you can see how people up and down the manufacturing supply chain or vertical can meet those four gates. If you're a manufacturer of the product itself, I think manufacturing companies claim like 60% of the R&D tax credits in the country. We got from job shops to manufacturers to integrators. This tax credit can be used by people throughout the industry.
Like if you had to give a percentage of what a client's expenses or their engineering payroll would go toward this credit, what would be your guess?
Yeah, so that's a question that really will lead to showing how integrators are really strong in this R&D credit. I've found that most manufacturing system integrators, control houses, and design firms, they are working under fixed price contracts. And their engineers are spending at least 80% of their time working to design and test solutions. There's something called the substantially all principle, which means if you can show that 80% or more of somebody's time or resources time is spent in qualified R&D per those four gates we talked about, you can take 100% of their salary. What this means is if you're an automation or integrator that is spending pretty much all of your time on these projects, then a large part of your payroll will be able to go towards this tax credit. Worked with one company that I think maybe 15 or 20% of their payroll, which was associated with admin and maintenance, was not taken under this tax credit. The good thing about this tax credit as well is you can go back into open years and claim it. So, you're talking about being able to do 4 years at once. We got this client $2.3 million of R&D credits. And, it's a mid-sized control house in the middle of the country, but they have a big presence on both coasts, and they have been investing in operations and expansion. So this is one of the things that rewards that type of investment and that initiative to, act as a problem solver in the industry.
With so many people working from home, canceling in-person meetings and events, and spending more and more time online, it's more important than ever that your digital presence is top-notch and that you find creative ways to maximize your marketing resources and get in front of your customers. The Industrial Automation Exchange and the Talking Industrial Automation podcast are the perfect places to start. The Exchange offers upgrades, packages, and display opportunities to ensure your brand is top of mind during your customers' complicated, research-based buying journey. The Talking Industrial Automation podcast can also help because now you can place your 60-second spot into the podcast. It's super easy and a unique way to reach new audiences. To learn more about the packages and advertising opportunities or how to become a podcast sponsor, contact me, Lisa Richter, at industrydir@controlsys.org. Let's face it, it's a digital world out there, and you need to make sure your company doesn't get left behind. Let the Exchange and podcast go to work for you. How well known is this? Like, are you coming across client after client after client who's just like blown away that this is out there? And oh my goodness, how have I not heard of this before?
Yeah. So rules really changed for the R&D credit in 2009, 10. Prior to that, you had to actually be discovering information. So that really limited the R&D credit to people who were doing pure product development and discovery. After these rule changes, now it's become opened up to people with any industry because of that 4-part test. So to answer your question, we're still seeing that people are kind of amazed that this is out there for them in the integrator space. It is, if you Google the R&D tax credit, you'll get a deluge of information about it. It's getting more and more popular. And part of that is tax law keeps getting passed and court precedent keeps coming out that just strengthens this R&D credit more and more. In 2015, the PATH Act, which was a tax bill, it made the R&D tax credit permanent. So prior to that, it had to be renewed every year. So now it's permanent and people are sure that it's there and they can forecast using it. After the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017, this credit is one of the biggest tax credits available. So it's starting to get more and more traction. But a lot of the integrators we work with are very engineering focused, and they're focused on solving engineering problems, not necessarily worrying about tax planning. And through the CPAs that we've partnered with, we've been able to act as a tool to come in and help them access this benefit and other benefits as well. Obviously we're focusing on R&D tax credits because that's what I focus on in this company, but there's a whole plethora of other strategies and tax incentives that we've helped companies in this industry use.
Okay, let's dive into that a little deeper and tell me how your company has grown or changed in the past year and what you expect in the next 12 to 24 months.
Yeah. So the past year, we have really expanded our business valuation and M&A due diligence team, brought on new partners. So this is allowing us to get more into the actual execution of business valuation and being part of a team that executes on merger and acquisition. That really is something that complements some of the services we were already providing with kind of financial strategy design and financial fitness. So that's a natural glove for us to move into. We're also making investments in our own R&D in the data and analytics space. And particularly, we're trying to develop predictive analytics tools that'll help companies better forecast their revenue. Now, obviously, if you can better forecast revenue, you can implement financial strategies that'll lead to higher profits, right? And, in our world, we find that current revenue forecasting tools are often backward looking and have wide error bars. Now, we don't know if we can fix this. And, we're not saying we're trying to change the world, but we're just exploring whether or not the capabilities of data analytics that are out there can help. We can see if we can bring them to bear in the financial strategy and tax strategy process.
Well, it's impossible to have a conversation these days without bringing in the pandemic. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on the impact of the virus shutdown and how it will affect the economy going forward.
All the macroeconomic things I can talk about are obviously not my own thoughts. I follow Goldman Sachs and other analysts pretty closely, and they're projecting 6 to 7% contraction for 2020. And we all know those kind of bad headlines by now. But where we have been talking internally as a team is we're trying to take the philosophy of looking at it as whenever one door closes, another opens. And what opportunities are going to emerge in the new economy now that we're leaving the shelter of our homes? There are going to be opportunities out there. And there's a confluence of factors that we think really favor American business and manufacturing in particular. I'll kind of go into these. We've been having we've published blog posts, had a lot of internal discussions about them. But so the first favorable factor, right, is you have a tax code that has many pro-business incentives that are designed to help businesses keep their hard-earned cash. These would include things like cost segregation, R&D tax credits, bonus depreciation, which came out of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and opportunity zones. So all those things are there. Additionally, the past two downturns that this company has worked in, we've seen that, the government really wants to use all the tools that it has to help businesses stay afloat. That just lends to the argument that the tax code is one of the tools that they can use. So first one, pro-business tax code. The second factor here is this CARES Act, which everybody knows about by now. Everybody knows about the PPP, Paycheck Protection Program, obviously helping businesses get access to cash. But there's a number of other provisions in that act that are pro-business. One of them being the ability to now carry net operating losses, or NOLs, back 5 years. So you could potentially have a situation where if you're a business and you're hurting for cash, you can create an NOL using the various tax strategies like cost seg or bonus depreciation, create that NOL, then carry it backwards to a year where you had paid taxes, amend your tax returns, and then get a refund check back from the Treasury Department. Third factor is that there's going to be a lot of opportunities that need to be solved through innovation and R&D. And this is something companies excel at. I think you're particularly going to see this in the manufacturing space, where there's going to be a lot of reshoring of manufacturing operations. And it's not like companies who are used to low cost of labor overseas are just going to copy paste those operations back to the US. They're going to rely on people like system integrators to come in and solve those efficiency and automation problems. The fourth factor is kind of relates to the banking sector, which I'm not the expert on, but essentially we know that after the 2008 crisis, right, that was caused in large part by risky bad behavior by the banks. So in the reform that came after that, banks are now required to have bigger capital buffers, right? So they're sitting on pretty healthy balance sheets right now. And from what we're hearing from the larger banks, banks with $250 billion in assets or more, so like your B of A, Goldman Sachs, what we're hearing is that they're trying to work with Treasury to see if that they can loosen up some of those capital buffer requirements, because they really want to help out in the lending to small businesses and mid-sized businesses. And we really think that the psychology here is that because these banks were so at fault in the last crisis, they really want to be part of the solution this time around. Again, just to recap those 4 points, the tax code, very favorable. This CARES Act has a lot of opportunity. There's in the market, there's opportunity to solve new problems and be innovative. And then the banking system, I think, is going to play a part as well. Yeah, that's kind of where we see post-COVID-19. The main thing that we don't want is for money and credit to dry up. And our work, luckily, we get to work on helping companies with keeping more money in their business. I think the U.S. is in okay shape, and we have a very positive outlook on this recovery.
I've been working with associations for my whole career, and I can honestly say I have never experienced a group of business professionals so willing to share, collaborate, and support one another as the CSIA community. During these unprecedented times, having a group of peers to turn to is invaluable. Whether the current climate means your phone is ringing off the hook or you're chewing your nails to the quick, now is the time to invest in your company, yourself, and this unique community that has a culture of sharing baked into its DNA. You'll also have access to member benefits such as best practices, insurance and legal programs, marketing tools, professional development opportunities, and so much more. To find out how you can join and contribute to this one-of-a-kind organization, visit www.controlsys.org/member-services. Look, I know these are some crazy times, but the CSIA community is ready to be by your side. All you have to do is join us. What are you hearing from your customers in terms of what their challenges are right now?
It's kind of starting to shift now, literally in the last week because of lockdowns getting lifted. But up until this point, it's really been cash flow, right? Cash flow is a major concern. Our clients need access to cash to help finance continuing operations and expansion plans during this economic time. Luckily, the services we offer allow companies to capitalize on things like the PPP and other provisions in the CARES Act. We already talked about the NOL carrybacks and carry forwards, cost segregation and bonus depreciation, which are products and services that we provide that can help out there. So I know a lot of our other clients have also been having problems with the PPP, right? I think anybody who's been in business or talking to business owners knows that the PPP thing was a whole crazy scramble. But we talk to businesses around the country about it every day. And some of the big takeaways are, it seems as if the large banks are having a hard time meeting or were having a hard time meeting the application demand. I have a lot of clients that work with certain large banks that are saying they have no idea what happened with their loan or whether or not the funding is coming. On the other hand, smaller regional banks had more success with getting their clients the PPP. So yeah, those are just some interesting observations. We're not directly dealing with PPP loan applications, but we're kind of in that circle working with CPAs. Those are the two main challenges I'd say is cash flow and dealing with the regulations and opportunities with the CARES Act.
So it seemed like, these R&D tax credits would be a really good thing right now because if people are, hurting for cash or whatever. But what's the timeline? Are we talking about, you do the work and then bada boom, bada bing, you've got this nice pile of cash, or what? Walk me through the process. And I'm also curious about, is this work done on a contingent basis or, give me some of the mechanics.
Sure. So I'll tell you some of the mechanics. So as far as timing, right now we're kind of in an extended tax season. So if your CPA is finishing up your tax work and you're looking at your tax bill, having an R&D credit immediately could alleviate that tax bill, right? Then, we talked about amending tax returns to go back and claim the R&D credit for prior years. So, most likely businesses will be be able to go back to 2016 or 2017. So they can, if they claim credit and they paid taxes in those years, they can get a refund. Now, that is generally a longer lead time. It takes 12 to 16 weeks to get the refund check once the return has been amended. But, there's a number of other ways it works. If you're a qualified startup company, meaning you're less than 5 years old, you have less than $5 million in average gross receipts, you can actually use the tax credit to offset the employer portion of payroll tax. So there's one way that this could be an immediate benefit, right? So that's kind of the timing of it. And then the way a company like us works, we're not contingency based. Essentially, we do a free analysis for anybody who wants to look into it. And in that free analysis, we give them a range of what we believe their benefit would be and our fixed fee. Our fee, it's a firm fixed price and it doesn't change, whether or not we save you or we find more tax credits.
Got it. So let's kind of switch our focus to the automation marketplace as a whole. What, in your opinion, are the biggest challenges there?
I'm really going to keep it to the U.S. automation marketplace because that's where my clients are. So that's where my observations come from. Like I said, in the near term, there's going to be a big effort to reshore production capabilities from overseas. And like we said, this is going to require a lot of problem solving on the part of automation and integrators in the U.S. Meeting these demands, I think a couple challenges are out there in the automation industry. One of them is a workforce challenge. And I think, that's widely agreed upon. A lot of my clients talk about the ability to attract and maintain a workforce with the requisite skills to work on these complex projects. Some of our clients are having a hard time finding young mechanical engineers that can perform the same level as these kind of the old guard who is now retiring or moving out. And that also varies based upon the education system of where you're located. Some companies are located near a university that has a great mechanical engineering program. Some aren't. So bottom line, mechanical engineering. And then even on the control side, like the younger generation is great at programming and computer stuff, but we've had clients tell us, these integration jobs require engineers to go on site for months at a time, weeks, if not months. And a lot of the younger integrator or younger engineers have a hard time with being on the client site, babysitting the system until it's fully signed off on and it's started up. Obviously, those needs vary. Also, another workforce challenge, I think, would be robotics. I don't think, from what I'm hearing, we're not where we need to be in our ability to provide, freshly minted young robotics engineers that understand the full capabilities of how to use these robots. So I think more investment is needed there. The second challenge I think integrators will need to rise to is also related to robotics here. I think we've fallen behind countries like Germany and Japan in pure R&D and innovation in the robotics space. A lot of my clients and a lot of US integrators are great at implementing robots and that's awesome, certainly needed. But I think, to truly be a leader, we need to invest more in pure R&D and robotics education. As we said, it's going to become such a big part of manufacturing that, we need to grab it by the horns. With all that being said, one theme that I'll keep playing on is that we live in a great country and we have a great ability to adapt and overcome, right? And these challenges present opportunities. And I've certainly seen some of our clients in this industry rise to the occasion. And I want to highlight one client out in Kentucky, has this workforce problem. And what they build robotic systems for the automobile industry, And to solve the problem, he essentially, working with others in the industry in that state, created an education program that takes kids out of high school. And instead of saying, go to college for 4 years for some degree you may or may not use, they say, all right, let's set up a program. We'll send you to the local community college where you'll learn electronics and robotics for 2 years. And while you're there, you'll work for my company so that you get the on-the-job experience. And then when these kids graduate, they come right into a job, and within 4 or 5 years, they're making 6 figures. So it's problem solving and innovation like that is really going to help this industry rise to the challenges.
Are you one of the 78% of CSIA members who said they wanted cybersecurity training? Well, now you've got it. CSIA has partnered with ISA to bring you a series of online courses that will get you the skills and expertise that are in high demand. This series will be offered throughout 2020 and is designed to prepare you for cybersecurity fundamentalist specialist and risk assessment specialist exams to earn certificates 1 and 2 of 4 that ultimately leads to the cybersecurity expert badge. Best of all, you can access the material anywhere and anytime. To find out more, visit www.controlsys.org/cyber2020. Why not make this the year you earn your cybersecurity badges? I guarantee you won't regret it. What makes you optimistic about the future of the automation industry?
I think just demand. There is going to be much more demand for industrial automation in the near and long term. And this really presents unbounded opportunities for this industry. Robotics and automation have been proven to produce positive bottom line and impacts for manufacturing companies. Coming at this from the financial perspective, when you are looking at projects to invest in and you're a CFO, you're looking at things like internal rate of return and net present value. And we know that automation projects tend to produce immediate positive NPV, net present value, and a strong IRR, internal rate of return. So CFOs know this, and I expect that they're going to continue to increase capital investment towards automation projects. And, you could say that this will only be heightened by the fact that, we're kind of social distancing now, and we're kind of in a new era in the way that humans relate to the manufacturing industry. So certainly, I'm very optimistic about the future of this industry. And, I've worked with great companies all around the country, and I've gotten to see some pretty cool projects. And I think this is only going to increase in the coming years.
Tell me why customers return to you for project after project.
Yeah, so I really think it's the service that our team provides. We're a small to mid-sized family-owned company. My dad started it with his partner, and I've got brothers that work in the business. We've worked with a lot of other companies that are family-owned, and we really develop relationships with our clients that last multiple years. With this R&D tax credit, this is something that our clients want to use every year because the benefit is there every year. I'm visiting their sites year after year, engaging in hours-long conversations, talking about their operations, but also about life in general and their goals in general. So naturally, we tend to develop a deep personal connection with these clients. And where the real the money factor is we develop an intimate understanding of how their business works. We're not flying by night, doing a desk review of their operations. we're talking at length with these guys and getting intimate with their company. And I think people really value that and like that. And like I said, it's actually interesting now that I'm thinking about it. A lot of our clients in the industrial automation space are family owned, family run companies. I just kind of have a natural sympathy and gravitation towards because I'm in a family run company. So there's a lot of common ground to connect on with those clients.
Sure, that makes sense.
And then, of course, besides the sorry to cut you off, but that's the personal relationship. But we're also helping companies get money back into their business. And, it's easy to see the fruits of that labor. And, when we come back for our annual visits, there'll be more engineers sitting in the engineer club, or there'll be new, younger mechanics or fabricators that are hired. And I like to think that the services we provide are helping increase that hiring and that investment in the company.
Very rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
So I have one final question, and this might be the hardest one yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, if you could go back in time and have a conversation with your younger self just starting out, what advice would you give him?
Yes, we're going to, besides sell all your stocks mid-March of 2020, and then buy that. Yeah, besides that type of advice. So one thing I kind of been reflecting on is, so I would say read more of the great literature. When I was younger, I used to read all these fact-based books and try to cram all these facts and data sets into my head and, trying to sharpen my capabilities and my arguments. And I've kind of switched in recent years to reading more of the classics. And I feel like a lot of that fact-based book reading was kind of wasted time. And, I find that there's sometimes so much more wisdom packed into one line of somebody like Dostoevsky or Steinbeck than there is in a nonfiction, very fact-based book. So I've been reflecting on that recently, and I would say to my younger self, read more great literature.
I would have never seen that one coming, Andy. I would have never guessed that would be your advice. And I agree wholeheartedly. It's awesome. I'm a reader myself, so kudos to you.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Talking Industrial Automation. If you are interested in learning more about Andy Parrish or Diligentiam,
Yeah.
You can find them on the Industrial Automation Exchange at www.csiexchange.com. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Andy, for joining me today.
Lisa, this was awesome. Thanks for having me.
If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe in iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also help others find us by leaving a 5-star review and sharing your favorite episodes with colleagues. Thanks for listening to the Talking Industrial Automation podcast. Thanks also to bensound.com and Wistia for the music bumpers. Until next time.